Can you tell us a little bit about the journey of Easypaydirect, why you started it, and where you are now with who you service?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first off, there's an evolution there, right? So I started it because I grew up with Hal Elrod and John Rulin and a handful of other people that are mutual friends selling Cutco knives. And there's a core group of us that were all kind of the number one rep in the company for many years, for like a 6, 7, 8 year period. And after doing that and being number one for a year, the slate gets wiped clean at the end of the year, right? And then you start over. And then you've got this grind for the year again. And so I did that a number of times and I thought, this is annoying. I need to do something else.
Right.
And I'm not going to sell knives my whole life. So great training ground. But I built this list of criteria of things that was important in the next venture. I'm a fairly deliberate person. And the list was stuff like no cap on income, recession resistant, residual by nature, tech focused, B2B. And the B2B was a big thing because I wanted to build what I recognized from selling Cutco. One of the things was that when I was done, I had a list of 1,000 Mrs. Jones. And I was like, what am I going to do with 1,000 Mrs. Jones aside from, things that I'm not going to do? So I thought, okay, well, what business can I get into where at the end of it, no matter what, I'm going to have this ridiculous Rolodex, right? I'm going to have this ridiculous set of contacts, network, friends, et cetera. And that to date was the best business decision that I made because, if my world explodes, I tend to look at things as what's the absolute worst case, what's the absolute best, and then recognizing that neither are likely to happen. And the absolute worst case is I get a job as a CEO of somebody's company for several $100,000 a year or $1 million plus a year. That's not likely to happen, right? The next level up from that is if my world explodes, I start another company with one of these people. And that's a pretty good worst case scenario. So that got me into like the frame of what do I want to be doing? And I found somebody through Pete Vargas, who you may also know,
Yeah.
Another old Cutco guy. And he connected me with somebody that owned a payment company in Phoenix. That was my introduction to payments. And so for me, it was all purely selfish criteria of how I can build the best life for me, right? And then over time, it evolved into kind of the differentiating factors of Easypaydirect and what was the space in the market where we could serve the most people and be the most valuable.
And
that's also
explain to somebody who doesn't know what the hell we're talking about and they're like kind of glazing over. What is payment processing? What is Easypaydirect? Like what is the transaction or the widget that you're building?
Yeah. So I think simplest form, payment processing is just the ability for a business to accept credit cards and or like an ACH payment, right? A direct bank to bank payment. That's simplest form. And you said, something similar to Stripe, PayPal, et cetera, that they serve as a payment processor. What's unique about Easypaydirect, and I'll give you kind of the 3-minute version because I think it'll help people understand what the risk is in payments. But what's unique about Easypaydirect is how we serve e-commerce or people that might have a higher likelihood of having a problem accepting payments. So simplest form, you and I as consumers, one of the benefits to using Visa or MasterCard, Amex Discover is that anything that we buy ever, we have 6 months to dispute that charge. So like I can go and buy a meal at a restaurant 6 months later, 5.5 months later, I can hit up my bank that issued the credit card to me, dispute the transaction. And the first thing that'll happen is that money will get pulled out of the business owner's bank account. Now the business owner can contest it and say, no, we gave him the food. Here's the receipt. He signed it. And they'll probably win that, right? But they have to fight to get it back. Now, here's the challenge. If that business isn't there when I, as a consumer, dispute the charge, their credit card processor pays it back. So when a business closes, and how often do businesses close?
All the time.
All day, every day, all the time.
Yeah,
right?
last 18 months, it's been a lot.
Out of control, right? And even in normal times, right? Something like I don't know, an obscene amount of businesses close every year. So, and even if they're great businesses, they still end their life cycle at some point in time. So when that happens, the trailing 6 months, the credit card processor is paying out refunds and chargebacks for 6 months. They all turn into chargebacks. So credit card processors are concerned about this inherently. And they're not very concerned about a restaurant, but they're concerned about businesses where the likelihood of a dispute is higher or the likelihood of them closing is higher. And as soon as you go into e-commerce, that likelihood increases a lot. So the way that credit card processing companies control that is by a number of factors, but they need to control the risk. And there are two different camps for how to control that. The first is what I would look at as like a loan shark or like a gangster. And so if you borrow money from a loan shark or a gangster, how do they get the money back? By all means necessary, right? Who will they lend money to? Basically everybody. And those two things are necessarily tied. So like Stripe and PayPal, you can spin up an account immediately, right? They don't know anything about you. They don't know who you are, what you do, how you operate, what you sell, how you sell it, how you deliver it, if you deliver it. And so because they haven't done any underwriting, the only recourse they have is to suspend your account and or hold your money or close the account. That's it. It's not good or bad. That's just how that business model works. So the flip side of the coin is if you are lending money to somebody, like who do banks lend money to?
Yeah, established businesses and rich people.
People that don't need it, right? By and large. And how do they assess the risk? They go through underwriting, right? So they control risk on the front end. So with e-commerce businesses, the safest thing for a business owner to do is to go through an underwriting process so that the processor knows who you are, what you do, how you operate, what you sell, how you sell it, the details, because it dramatically decreases the likelihood of a business owner having money held or having an account closed. So those are kind of the basics. And so Easypaydirect leans really far on that other end, but we want to make sure not only do our banking partners and processors thoroughly understand the business model, we still want to have redundancy. So we built software that allows you to have multiple merchant accounts in it and then split the volume across them so that if you ever have a problem with one of the merchant accounts and they hold money, they close the account, whatever, it doesn't impact your whole business and it doesn't completely eliminate your ability to operate. That's kind of the nutshell of it.
And what are businesses paying for that processing? Because I think I know what I pay, but maybe I don't actually have a clue. I have a coaching business where we charge clients $288 or $888, or depending on what they're looking to get out of our coaching program. For me to have the ease of collecting credit card payments, having that auto processed, go through an intermediary like Easypaydirect or Stripe or, whatever, Amex card services, and then end up in my checking account getting deposited every month. What am I paying for that service? And does that cost, change with Easypaydirect versus Stripe versus PayPal versus this? Where, because you mentioned the risk, the loan shark. I've got to imagine if you're a company that can spin somebody up right away, you're probably charging them extra for the risk. So where does that money fall on what it's costing somebody a payment process or credit card process?
Yeah, so a couple things. First, by and large, Stripe and PayPal, and those are what we call payment aggregators or payment facilitators. It's the label that we use inside the industry. They're more expensive than other merchant account providers, with the exception of really high risk industries. And we're talking cannabis, kratom, adult streaming services. It's the stuff that you think about as high risk, right? But there's this whole intermediate category that nobody thinks of as high risk as a business owner. They're like, we're not high risk. That is high risk because it's high risk of the business closing or chargebacks.
Right.
And even if your business is perfect, like you've never had a refund, never had a chargeback, everybody loves you, if you're in an industry that has those problems, you're clumped in with them. So you can do nothing wrong, but like a competitor does something wrong and that payment processor has to close them. They look at the portfolio and they're like, oh wait, this guy over here, he's in the same, get rid of that one too. Because they're looking at things portfolio wide in a category. So from a price perspective, by and large, you're going to save money working with a traditional merchant account provider. But if you're doing e-com or you're selling information products or doing live events or stuff like that, the financial thing should not be the driver. It should be working with a payment processor that understands your business model. Like that's number one. Because PayPal and Stripe aren't egregiously priced. They're not like super high in cost. And the way that they mitigate is by just closing the accounts that are too high risk for them. And they catch some of them on the front end. Like if you go in and you say, hey, I do adult videos of animals, you're just not going to get approved for Stripe or PayPal, right? But if you say that you sell supplements and then later they find out that you're also selling CBD and cannabis and kratom and all of the fringe supplements, they're just going to close you later. They're going to find it and close you later. It might be a month, it might be 6 months, might be a year. It's just going to happen though. And that's how they control risk.